On July 31st, 1846, Abraham Lincoln addresses a letter to the voters of the 7th Congressional District. It's a remarkable document. It's a last-minute handbill produced in the middle of a campaign for Congress. The voters of the 7th Congressional District were the voters in the district where Abraham Lincoln was running for Congress. July 31st, 1846 was just a few days before the early August election day, and he was worried. And the content of the handbill shows what he was worried about, and it's kind of remarkable in retrospect to think about it. So let's begin a close reading of this handbill and try to unwind what Abraham Lincoln was trying to accomplish in his own mind with this communication to the voters in his congressional district. He writes, "A charge having gotten into circulation in some of the neighborhoods of this district, in substance, that I am an open scoffer at Christianity, I have, by the advice of some friends, concluded to notice the subject in this form." Now that opening sentence suggests the dire nature of this. Abraham Lincoln was accused, according to his report, of being an open scoffer at Christianity. Not just someone who rejected it, but who scoffed at it. That's a key word that's worth remembering. Someone who mocks, ridicules Christianity, the dominant religion of that district and the United States at that time. Lincoln says, "That I am not a member of any Christian church is true, but I have never denied the truth of the Scriptures, and I have never spoken with intentional disrespect of religion in general or of any denomination of Christians in particular." So he says, you might think, a defensive way, depending on how you read the line, that he's never denied the truth of the Scriptures, meaning the Old and the New Testament and the gospel of Jesus and his disciples. He says he's never spoken with intentional disrespect of religion, any religion, Judaism, Islam, Christianity. He doesn't specify, but he makes it broad. Or of any denomination of Christians. And there were numerous denominations of Christians active in American life at that time. But he does admit in the next sentence, he says, "It is true that in early life I was inclined to believe what I understand is called the, quote, doctrine of necessity, end quote. That is," and then he explains it, "that the human mind is impelled to action or held in rest by some power over which the mind itself has no control, and I have sometimes," and then he puts in parentheses, "with one, two, or three, but never publicly, tried to maintain this opinion in argument." Now that's a kind of remarkable confession for a candidate for Congress, but I think Lincoln feels that he has to do it. He's running for Congress in 1846 against a Methodist preacher of some renown, a man named Peter Cartwright. Cartwright is a Democrat and Lincoln is a Whig. There are members of Christian denominations supporting either candidate, but Lincoln is in particular worried about a group of Orthodox Christians who are concerned about the rumors that have been building for years that Lincoln is not a member of any Christian church, that he is not a believer in the Scriptures, and that he has actually argued against Christianity. So he admits that he's not a member of a church, which most people were not actual church members, even when they were churchgoers. He denies that he ever was disrespectful to any religion, and then he describes his belief, a kind of fatalism, an acceptance of a greater power than humanity that he calls the doctrine of necessity. But he says specifically he only argued that in private. This habit of arguing, thus, however, I have entirely left off for more than 5 years. This is 1846. By dating it to 5 years, he's indicating to his audience that ever since he's been married and begun to raise a family, he gave up this form of early questioning of faith. And I add here, I've always understood this opinion to be held by several of the Christian denominations. Now that sentence, according to some historians, is actually very telling. When he says here that this doctrine of necessity, this version of fatalism, is something that he understood to have been held by several Christian denominations, he might be trying to inject a kind of shrewd reminder to some of the more Orthodox Christians in his district that his opponent, Peter Cartwright, is what you might call a New Light Methodist. And this is all context and background, but it's essential. A Methodist who came out of the Second Great Awakening, who believed in the power of people to choose their Savior, rather than the more orthodox approach of some of the Old Light denominations, like the Episcopalians or the Presbyterians. And Lincoln might be, in a way, trying to inject himself into some of this denominational debate. That's one of the key words in this document, denomination, the sect of Christianity and their particular doctrines and beliefs. He says at the end of this, "I do not think I could myself be brought to support a man for office whom I know to be an open enemy of and scoffer at religion." Notice how he uses that word twice. Scoffer comes back from the beginning, and he says he himself would not vote for someone who scoffed at religion or ridiculed it. "But leaving the matter of eternal consequences between him and his Maker, I still do not think any man has the right thus to insult the feelings and injure the morals of the community in which he may live. If then I was guilty of such conduct, I should blame no man who should condemn me for it. But I do blame those, whoever they may be, who falsely put such a charge in circulation against me." Lincoln wrote this down, had it printed, and then circulated in the newspapers of the district and published and distributed to voters right before the election. And what's interesting, I think, as an additional element of context that explains how aggressive and savvy Lincoln was as a politician, is that even after the votes were counted and he beat Peter Cartwright and got elected to Congress, Abraham Lincoln continued to circulate this document and ask newspaper editors in the district to publish it, even after he won, because he wanted to set the record straight. He had been fighting against allegations of what they call infidelity for years in his political career. Somebody who knew him was leaking stories that he was unwilling to accept the truth of the scriptures. And he was determined in 1846 to put an end to that. And that's why this is a very telling document in a moment in his career when Abraham Lincoln is, for the first time, leaving Illinois and about to head off to go to Washington to serve in Congress and begin the next phase of his political life.